answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
We Americans may sometimes come off as a little direct and urgent in our counsel. This is why President Trump demands seriousness and reciprocity from our friends here in Europe. The reason why, my friends, is because we care deeply. We do not want allies to rationalize the broken status quo rather than reckon with what is necessary to fix it. For we in America have no interest in being polite and orderly caretakers of the West's managed decline. We do not seek to separate, but to revitalize an old friendship and renew the greatest civilization in human history.
That's a very powerful and direct, candid statement from our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, delivered in Munich yesterday as a gathering of the European allies, making it clear that we might sometimes come off a little brusque, but while we want to be your friends, we're not going to come in beginning with an apology, as Barack Obama began his term, going to all these nations and everything and apologizing for everything the U.S. has done wrong. Rubio's not saying we've done everything right, but at this time and space, we need to make it clear there are clear delineations. He's talking on several planes. He's talking about the mass migration that Europe has allowed, and of course, then we in turn allowed through Joe Biden's open borders. Thank you, Joe Biden. And even Hillary Clinton yesterday, appearing at the same summit, stated mass migration has been a mess. I've been running a commentary all day on that. My commentaries run it 3 times each day. In case you miss one, you can catch the other, hopefully. They begin at 7:30 in the Jamie Allman Hour in the first 15 minutes or less. And then in the Tony Colombo Show at 3:30. But her words about mass migration being detrimental, not just to the U.S., but to Europe, and the European leaders recognize that. That is one plane of existence and discussion Rubio was laying out. The other is world security, and that involves Iran. And we all need to be on the same page when it comes to dealing with Iran. Again, he's talking to European leaders in Germany. Russia, China, North Korea, Cuba, not represented, Argentina, so forth. But he's talking about what you have built, and we have helped you build and secure in Europe. And specifically, Germany, Britain, Poland, France, Italy. You would think they would be fully wide awake, but they have in their midst, the same as we do, naysayers and those who want to dispute and argue history when they don't even know history. Welcome on aboard to hour number 1, Larry Connors USA. We're here every Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 p.m. for you. And when we're on the air, we are streaming video. You can watch the program, and very easy to do so. You go to NewsTalkSTL Rumble right now, or Larry Connors USA Rumble. And everything goes up later as a podcast at NewsTalkSTL, LarryConnorsUSA.com, and Larry Connors USA Facebook. Excuse me, I'm still battling this sore throat, but we're going to get it through. We're not going to let it put us down. And I'll remind you, with Larry Connors USA, you're going to get news, analysis, opinion, and education. You will leave this hour with more knowledge than you have right now. In our second hour, a very interesting guest for you. And many of you will know him. Many of you probably listen to him. Started part of his radio career here in St. Louis. Now is nationally syndicated. Coast to coast, George Noory. Now I want to ask him what his thoughts were about Obama yesterday admitting, yeah, there are UFOs. I'm pretty convinced there are. But I haven't really seen any aliens. By that he means space aliens. But the very fact that he acknowledged that and the position he had to know more information than you have and even George Noory has. That'll be coming up in our second hour. And later this hour, back to Dr. Fake. Still, of course, defending science he found in COVID. And anyone who disputed him, you're arguing against science, not me. And the damage he caused to our nation for decades to come. Our story behind the story this hour. The CIA and others trying to assassinate Fidel Castro. The story behind the story before we complete this hour. Going back to Rubio yesterday, our Secretary of State in Munich making it very clear we might come off as brusque, a little difficult, but we know what we stand for is right. We're not going to budge. And that includes dealing with Iran. General Jack King.
The part of the speech that I really loved was when Rubio identifies the failed strategies that the United States has had and how we're going after them and wants to join with Europe in working on these common problems ourselves. And what are we talking about? Mass migration, open borders, failed climate and energy strategies, the reality that we surrendered and we relied far too much on multinational organizations like the UN, the World Trade Organization, the World Health Organization, and the list goes on. Didn't solve a lot of problems for any of us. And then finally, it's an admission that we have to recover our defense capabilities and conduct a buildup to return to the kind of deterrence policies that we've had in the past. The Europeans have the same problems. Yes, shared culture, shared values, but common problems and challenges too. And I think the Europeans will positively respond to this because they see these problems and they know they have to get after it.
Have to get after them. I want you to hear in the next hour, but I'll tell you what she says right now. Republican Alabama Senator Katie Britt saying it's kind of rich to watch the leftists go flying off to Germany and advise them how to secure their borders and protect their nation. It's more than rich. It's more than ironic. It proves you can't fix stupid. That's coming up later as well. Back to Secretary of State Rubio, talking about what we're going to be doing in this nation, and that is we know what the intent of radical Islam is, and we will not forget it.
Islamic movements in the world identify the West writ large, but the United States in particular, as the greatest evil on the earth. And every chance to have the notion that somehow radical Islam would be comfortable with simply controlling some province in Iraq or Syria is just not borne out by history. Radical Islam has shown that their desire is not simply to occupy one part of the world and be happy with their own little caliphate. They want to expand. It's revolutionary in its nature. It seeks to expand and control more territories and more people. And radical Islam has designs openly on the West. On the United States, on Europe, we've seen that progress there as well. And they are prepared to conduct acts of terrorism, assassinations, murders, you name it, whatever it takes for them to gain their influence and ultimately their domination of different cultures and societies, but especially to the United States, who they identify as the chief source of evil on the planet.
Secretary Rubio also stressed that the Trump administration is open to negotiations, but we're not going to take our foot off the pressure on Iran and its nuclear ambitions. Many are looking at all this and saying, striking a good nuclear agreement with Tehran is historically difficult to impossible. And Trump did declare last Friday a regime change would be the best thing. And we have additional U.S. forces in that region. But then inside our nation, how many came in with a visa? I mean, we let them in with a visa. They didn't come in illegally, but we let them in with a visa. Rubio's watching some of their rhetoric and their actions.
Look, my job at the State Department is if I identify someone who I believe is present, someone who's a visitor, a guest to the United States, and we identify that their presence in our country poses a threat to our foreign policy, to our national security, we're gonna take that person's visa away. We're gonna take their visa away. That's what we're gonna do.
You're gonna take the visa away, and that means you're out of here. Charlie Kirk at one time had described the difference between a Democrat and a leftist. And his remarks bear repeating with what we're seeing happen now. Watch how they've been dancing away from solutions to fund our government. Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullin.
As far as having like a photo ID exposed, absolutely not. Why? Is because the Democrats we've seen has been doxing them. They went into their place of worship where they thought they might be at. They went into their hotels. They went into the restaurants. What are you going to do? Expose their faces so you can intimidate their families? What we want is ICE to be able to do their job, and we would love for local law enforcement and for states to cooperate with us. But if we want to have a serious conversation, you bet. Let's sit down and have a conversation, figure out where we can make it where the laws that Congress passed, the ICE agents can enforce and do it in a safe manner and make sure our streets are safer. But what has happened is they haven't negotiated in good faith.
That's the bottom line. They are not negotiating in good faith. You know what their idea of a compromise is. And when they're talking about a compromise, it's another clear example of their lack of good faith. The compromise would be if we're standing apart, I'll come a step closer to you, you come a step closer to me. I'll put down this hammer, you put down your hammer. And you begin to slowly de-escalate. And their position is, you come 4 or 5 steps toward me, and I'll retreat 20 steps. They're always going to be moving the goal line because they do not want to have a resolution. And here's what they are probably targeting, and I think Senator Markwayne Mullin is correct on this remark.
When they wanted to do this 2-week CR, we asked for 6 weeks. They asked for 2 weeks. We said, okay, it took them 10 days before they gave us a counteroffer. White House returned an offer in 48 hours. It took them another 2 days to respond. And then when we asked, okay, listen, we're going to go into shutdown. Let's have 2 more weeks of a clean CR because it took you guys 10 days to give us just a counteroffer. What they said is, no, we're not doing it. And that's when I started saying this isn't about actually opening DHS back. This is about waiting until the president is done giving the State of the Union, which is a week from Tuesday, which is why I said this is nothing but political theater, because what they're saying they can't even do. They're saying they're trying to keep ICE from doing their job. Mm-hmm. And as you admitted earlier, and because it's true, ICE and the Border Patrol is funded through the one big beautiful bill up until 2028. And so the only thing they have shut down is the federal agencies that I named, like FEMA and the Coast Guard and TSA. So they're shutting down thousands of workers for nothing but a talking point.
And TSA, that's a critical part of our security at this point, obviously. There'll come a time if it continues and drags out, not enough TSA agents to go around to man the airports. Some smaller airports might be closed. Some flights will have to be canceled. They can't handle all of the folks coming through. Democrats know this is a possibility, and they're using it as a saber over the head of Trump. He's not going to budge for that. The DHS funding officially lapsed last weekend. Border Patrol efforts, they continue. And negotiators, according to The Hill, negotiators, that would be the left, are showing few signs of backing down from their demands. There's nothing, according to the Hill, that says we have anything that's going to be resolved anytime soon. There's nearly a dozen demands for reforms to immigration enforcement. The Democrats headlined the other day. We want to tighten warrant requirements. We want to unmask agents engaging in field operations. We want to end roving patrols. Chuck Schumer said, any counteroffer from the Democrats or from the Republicans is not serious. You see how far apart? You try to get closer, they move farther away. But Mark Wayne Mullen says if they're waiting for the President's State of the Union, that is 1 week from tonight. 1 week from tonight, the President will give his State of the Union at this point. I'd mentioned earlier, Charlie Kirk once described the difference between working with and even talking with a Democrat and a far-left loony.
There's a difference between liberals and leftists, okay? It's a very big difference. A liberal is someone I will disagree with, and we'll have a wonderful time. We'll go out to dinner, and we'll consider each other friends. A liberal is someone that might believe in gay marriage. They might believe in more accessible abortion. They might believe in higher taxes. A liberal will agree to disagree. A liberal will have the conversation, and they'll say, we might not agree on this, but I still treat you with respect, and I really like you as a person. A leftist will try to shut you up before you even open your mouth. A leftist does not believe in capitalism whatsoever. A leftist is rooted in intolerance. And you see this happen all over the place in America, where college campuses get shouted down. You heard my message tonight. Do you think I'm a hateful speaker? Do you think that, I bring vitriol? I get labeled by groups on the left in America that I should not be allowed to speak on U.S. campuses. That I'm somehow spreading vitriol and hatred, and I'm spreading dangerous ideas. There's a difference between a liberal and a leftist.
And, of course, he was shut down with a bullet while addressing students on a campus. Charlie Kirk. Coming up, Dr. Fauci, Dr. Fake, he is gone from the government, living on a lot of retirement money, and who knows how much more money made on books and money collected from pharmaceutical groups. But his legacy continues to harm America. And our story behind the story, trying to assassinate Castro, lock and load, ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
You should know that when I endorse Wellington Environmental, it's because I believe and know they will do you right. Wellington takes pride in providing homeowners and businesses whatever they need. You need some dustless blasting? They will take care of that. You need some mold remediation? They can do that. They take pride in training their team to perform multiple services and having the equipment ready to get jobs finished. That's important to you. You make just one call, and you call a company that's been around for more than 35 years with more than 45 technicians in the field. Most of you know finding good workers, then having them show up on time could be difficult. Not for Wellington Environmental. They're there at the designated time, ready to go. Check them out to see what they could do for you. Dustless blasting or anything else you need. Wellington Environmental, 314-644-4930. 314-644-4930. Be well with Wellington. The best thing I ever did for my neck and back pain was go to Esquire Sports Medicine. Dr. Draghi and his staff can take care of those pains. If they can't, they'll refer you to a specialist. And when you're hurting, you don't want to wait. So often with Dr. Draghi and Esquire Sports Medicine, you're treated within 24 hours. For any joint or muscle pain, contact my doctor, Dr. Draghi, Esquire Sports Medicine on Big Bend, just north of 40. EsquireSportsMedicine.com. Another day must be another roofer in town. And John Beal and I were talking. He said, every time you turn around, there's a new roofing company. Many of them have no idea what they're doing, and the statistics show that many will be out of business within 2 to 5 years. Who are you going to call to help you then? You need to remember only one name, John Beal. John Beal Roofing. You have a problem, he can take care of it. And we'll be here for you. John Beal Roofing. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. Renewal by Anderson asking, are you still battling cold drafts? Windows icing up again? Utility costs surging? You're worried about paying more every month? The truth is, you may already be paying for new windows and money lost to energy escaping your home. And here's the thing, you don't want to do this project twice. Renewal by Anderson spends every day replacing bad technology, poor installation of windows and doors that simply don't stand the test of time. But you can afford the best. America's most trusted window replacement company, Anderson. Call 877-WINDOWS or visit rbastl.com. Learn about our December savings event right now. 877-WINDOWS, rbastl.com. Renewal by Anderson. Superior products, exceptional service.
This is News Talk STL. This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
39 of us per month plus med costs. Check GoodRx.
What is a pandemic, and how do we know when we're in the midst of one?
Well, a pandemic is when you have an infectious disease that is being consistently and sustained transmission from person to person through a wide range of regions, countries, and areas of the globe. So, for example, in China, it's an epidemic because it's concentrated in China. But once you start to get other countries in which you have sustained transmissibility, then you really have the makings of a pandemic. Pan meaning wide. It's widely distributed.
Those are the words of Dr. Fauci some time ago dealing with what is a pandemic. Interesting that he took point, and it's a fact he can't deny. This is one fact he cannot deny, saying, well, it started in one area, like in China, Wuhan, China, where it was an epidemic, widespread just in one area. And the Chinese government knew it. They shut down all transportation to or from Wuhan. And they started locking people into their homes. I don't mean just telling them stay inside. They were welding their doors shut, putting bars on their houses so they could not get out, except in specified times and one person at a time. They knew how bad that was. And yet the World Health Organization, along with Dr. Fauci and all the other so-called smart people, were saying, this isn't a big deal. Do you remember in the beginning when the story first surfaced, Dr. Fauci's attitude was, it should not affect us at all. It will not affect us. And then later, it might be a good idea to wear a mask. Not a big deal. And then later, well, if one mask will work, don't you think two would be better? The story just kept changing. In the meantime, he's constantly practicing to us science. Stay away from all those drugs that might be nothing more than horse medicine. When people were looking for answers. And then you got Andrew Cuomo, governor of New York, rounding up all those elderly in nursing homes if they've been sent to hospitals for care for COVID, telling them to send them back to their nursing homes. Basically, go back to the death camp where many of them ended up dying. And every day you remember, I know you remember every day, the leftist media had a meter running, tick, 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 another one, dun, 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 dun. And you might start watching an hour, and it shows 33,502 dead from COVID in our nation or the world, depending on what stat they were putting up. Before the hour is over, that number would multiply. And that's the other thing. We really don't know for a fact how many of them died of COVID, how many died with COVID. You're in a car wreck. You're obviously in a car wreck. They take you in and they check in, finds out you have COVID. COVID didn't kill you. The steering wheel through your head is what killed you. This is part of a PBS special the other day, and let's allow Dr. Fake a little more time to explain why we suddenly had a pandemic.
Do we have that on our hands now?
I think, Michael, that we are clearly at the brink of that, and let me explain briefly why. Because our fate is going to be determined by the ability of countries outside of China that have travel-related cases, and now they're starting to develop sustained transmission from person to person to person. So that right now, it's not just travel-related cases. So when you get countries like Japan and South Korea that have these cases that are person to person to person without any real ability to point to where it came from, that's the makings of a pandemic. And if you have multiple countries like that, then the horse is out of the barn, and it's going to be very difficult to prevent more cases from coming here to our own country.
Well, and in the beginning, his attitude, it's not going to be a big deal. And then, of course, we start shutting down. Trump shut down any flights from China. And immediately he's called xenophobic. You don't like yellow people. Trying to stop the spread of a disease coming into our town, our nation. But, of course, if they could get out of China and get to Europe somewhere and fly in from there, they still got to the U.S., many to the West Coast, many from some of the Italian situations, the communities that got infected, going right into New York, which escalated that number. The number I have here in front of me, and I'm telling you, listen to me with question marks. Is that accurate, Larry? I don't know, but I'll read you the number. They claim 103 million confirmed cases of COVID-19 during the height of the pandemic in our nation. 103 million. 1.2 million confirmed deaths, stating the most of any country. The 17th highest per capita worldwide. And Dr. Fauci and everybody, what were they trying to do? Oh, they came up with an idea. Let's have masks, and then we'll work on a virus, and you get the virus, you get the vaccine, it will stop you from getting it. It turned out it was not going to. And the chemical companies were protected because it's presented as an experimental drug. So if it didn't work or caused harm, you could not sue and go after them. And then they came up with this stupid idea. Why don't we make everybody stand at least 6 feet away in a supermarket? And why don't we put shield? And there was never any number to designate that. And later Fauci admitted that was not science. It wasn't even pseudoscience. You get more science playing the roulette wheel, believe me. PBS special with Fauci got into another particular question.
What was your relationship behind the scenes with President Trump like?
Well, you know, I described it in some detail in the book. It was complicated because when we first met, we had a real good rapport with us. You know, I describe it, maybe it was sort of, you know, a guy raised in Queens and a guy raised in Brooklyn. We had that similar New York swagger, whatever you wanted to call it, that we related to each other. And in the beginning, he actually listened to what we were saying and went along with it. But when it became clear that the virus was not going to disappear and it was not going to peak in February and go away in March and April the way the flu does, and as we got into the season of preparing for the election, then we started to go separately, because that's when I had to contradict him, which was painful for me to do that. You know, the people in the White House staff thought I was doing that because I wanted to get out. Not at all. It was not comfortable for me to do that. But that's when it went from, hey, we're buddies to, you know, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's wrong most of the time, and those kinds of things. So it started off of actually quite a good relationship.
But then it went south. A question on that information.
Reflecting on the pandemic, the partisan policy responses, the misinformation, the disinformation, it raises the real question of whether Americans will listen to federal public health officials and the guidance that they provide the next time a major epidemic rolls around. How do you see it?
I'm very concerned. I mean, deeply concerned about what misinformation and disinformation has done, because right now we have what I've called and have written about as the normalization of untruths.
There we go. We don't know what's true, what's not, and we have lost all belief in our health system, our health, quote, experts. And do you remember Senator Rand Paul going after Fauci?
You're telling everybody to wear a mask, whether they've had an infection or a vaccine. What I'm saying is they have immunity, and everybody agrees they have immunity. What studies do you have that people that have had the vaccine or have had the infection are spreading the infection? If we're not spreading the infection, isn't it just theater?
No, it's not.
The vaccine and you're wearing 2 masks. Isn't that theater?
No, that's not. Here we go again with the theater. Let's get down to the facts.
What?
Okay, the studies that you quote from Crotty and Sete look at in vitro examination of memory immunity, which in their paper they specifically say this does not necessarily pertain to the actual protection. It's in vitro.
And what study can you point to that shows significant reinfection? There are no studies that show
just let me finish the response to your question, if you please. The other thing is that when you talk about reinfection and you don't keep in the concept of variants, that's an entirely different ball game. That's a good reason for a mask.
And of course, everything I've told you to do is not going to do anything anyway. You lied to us, Fauci. And now the rest of the nation forever and the world will question health experts going forward. Coming up, our story behind the story. 600 plus attempts to kill Castro.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
I've told you how Tom Shaw Realtors can help you buy, sell homes, farms, acreage. Listen to what Tom Shaw Realtors did in 2025. More than 100 properties sold, $52 million in sales. ShawRealtors.com. 2026, a great time to visit Lit Cigar Lounge. The Lit Cigar Facebook has numerous events from tastings to music. My main reason for going to Lit is always quality cigars, premium whiskeys. Odds are we'll see each other at Lit Cigar Lounge. A few doors down, Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta. Get a pizza baked over coals. Excellent crust and flavor. Or choose one of the many great pasta dishes. You won't leave hungry. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta and Lit Cigar Lounge in the Chesterfield Valley. Renewal by Anderson asking, are you still battling cold drafts? Windows icing up again? Utility costs surging? You're worried about paying more every month? The truth is, you may already be paying for new windows and money lost to energy escaping your home. And here's the thing, you don't want to do this project twice. Renewal by Anderson spends every day replacing bad technology, poor installation of windows and doors that simply don't stand the test of time. But you can afford the best, America's most trusted window replacement company, Anderson. Call 877-WINDOWS or visit rbastl.com. Learn about our December savings event right now. 877-WINDOWS, rbastl.com. Renewal by Anderson. Superior products, exceptional service. Ever been in a wreck or felt as if you've been in a wreck? My advice, contact Dr. Bill Draghi, Esquire Sports Medicine. Yes, they can treat wreck victims, falls, other hazards of life, sports injuries. I go at least twice a month. That keeps the joints in line. Part of your spine get out of line, you start compensating, you're going to have additional pain. Don't be that guy. Visit Esquire Sports Medicine, Big Bend, just north of 40. EsquireSportsMedicine.com.
This is News Talk STL.
There's no place to hide down here. No place to hide down here. Went to the rock out on my knees. I heard the angels weep for me. No place to hide down here.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Now, Larry Connors with the story behind the story.
This was Havana in 1959. The dictator Fulgencio Batista had fled, and into the capital rolls a man who will change Cuba forever. Bearded and defiant, he rides at the front of a convoy of rebels. Tens of thousands line the streets to welcome him, cheering, waving flags, crying with joy. For them, this is the dawn of freedom, the fall of tyranny, the promise of a new Cuba. But revolutions rarely end where they begin, and this victory parade was only the start. The man hailed as a liberator would soon rule as a dictator, and the promise of freedom would give way to decades of control. We are talking about Fidel Castro, the revolutionary who toppled a dictator and became one himself. The name still echoes across history. For nearly 50 years, Castro ruled Cuba with a firm grip. To some, he was a hero who stood up to America. To others, he was a tyrant who crushed freedom.
That is a segment of a documentary from First Post Documentary. Fidel Castro, born 1926, did become the leader of Cuba in 1959, all the way up to 2008. President of Cuba from 76 to 2008. Now, he was born the son of a wealthy Spanish farmer. He had everything at his hand, kind of like a young George Soros. His father was rich. They had no concerns other than how many they needed to work the fields when they needed them. But then, like some rich kids that are not really educated, they think they are, he ends up becoming a radical, anti-capitalism, more Marxist, communist, in fact. The man he replaced, Batista, had seized power in a military coup in 1952. He canceled the planned presidential elections. In fact, he described his new system as disciplined democracy. What a phrase. Disciplined democracy. You can have freedom, you can have democracy, as long as you follow the order I give you. That's the way Batista was ruling. So Castro was hoping to run for office, but got deprived of it because Batista was a one-man dictatorship. Eventually, Batista moved to the right. He reunited and solidified ties with the wealthy, people like Castro's father, and the U.S. He severed diplomatic relations with the Soviet Union. trying to oppose Batista, Castro kept thinking of ways, how can I oust the regime? He formed a group called the Movement, which again began arming and training anti-Batista recruits. He took about 200 revolutionaries for one mission, and he wanted bloodshed. But they ran into trouble because some of the cars they set out from Santiago to get to Cuba to go after Batista never made it. Several of his men killed in advance. He failed, but he was not done. And eventually he got control again and had the people behind him, and he became the new dictator. And in the summer of '59, shortly after he became the leader of Cuba, he began nationalizing plantation lands and companies owned by Americans and other foreign landlords. It was clear he was going to take control of everything. And in a May Day speech in 1960, Castro announced all future elections would be canceled. And he proclaimed that I have a direct democracy where Cubans could assemble at demonstrations to express their will. So we don't really need elections. You can go on the street, say what you want. We won't need any elections. Which, by the way, he later also admitted. In addition to nationalizing businesses, sugar production, oil refinement, and everything else, he started cracking down on dissidents, and that included homosexuals. He later admitted that he had numerous young men killed if they were even suspected of being homosexual. Now, how does that sound to you leftists who seem to love Castro and what he stood for? And if you're gay, you recognize, just like when dealing with Iran, you're not going to have a chance of living whatsoever. In '61, Castro ordered Havana's U.S. Embassy to reduce its staff, claiming many were spies. We responded by ending diplomatic relations, and we increased CIA funding to help those against Castro. Eisenhower and Kennedy supported a CIA plan to add to a dissident militia. That resulted in the Bay of Pigs invasion, April '61. April the 15th, the CIA supplied B-26 bombers to hit 3 Cuban military airfields. Castro said this is all false flag information. But just in case, he arrested anywhere from 20,000 to 100,000. And the executions began. Then, of course, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis as he moved closer to Khrushchev, and Khrushchev started installing nuclear missiles in Cuba. The Kennedy blockade put in place, put an end to that. But that's how close we came. I remember in school then that my coach in football was saying he might not be there next week. I was old enough to understand, but I was not up to speed on what was happening. But he was in the National Guard, and he expected to be yanked into duty over the weekend and sent to deal with Cuba and the missile crisis, maybe even into Russia. Castro had numerous health ailments. And at one point, commenting on how he might recover or not, U.S. President George W. Bush said, "One day the good Lord will take Fidel Castro away." Castro, being an atheist, while many of his people were Catholic, said, "Now I understand why I survived Bush's plans and the plans of other presidents who ordered my assassination. the good Lord protected me. There are an estimated, and no one can document it, no fewer than 634 attempts to kill Castro. That's according to a former Castro Secret Service chief. Is it correct or not? We don't know. But we know some of the things they tried. And therein lies the rest of the story behind the story.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Do you know why I endorse Cafe Napoli, all the locations? Visit any of them, and you will quickly appreciate the quality of food, service, atmosphere. So maybe I'll see you at Cafe Napoli in Clayton, Napoli Kirkwood, Napoli 2 in Town and Country, Napoli 3 in St. Charles, right next door to Napoli C. Or maybe you'll find me at Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in the Chesterfield Valley. Now you know why I endorse Napoli, NapoliSTL.com.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Now, the end of the story behind the story.
There's always been this rumor that the U.S. government, specifically the CIA, had contracted 2 Italian-American gangsters to assassinate Fidel Castro. So tell me about Operation Mongoose and how did this story come together?
Well, one of the ways they tried to kill him was to enlist a woman named Marita Lorenz. She winds up in a bedroom with Fidel Castro. She opens up a jar of capsules with poison in them. She comes out of the bathroom and there's Fidel on the bed.
He's going to kill her.
And he says, you were going to kill me, weren't you?
But the U.S. government doesn't like Fidel taking over because he's now working as a satellite for the Soviets.
Just before JFK was killed, Castro essentially said, I know you're trying to kill me. And 2 can play this game. Uncle Sam wanted to get rid of Castro, but so did the mafia.
So did the mafia. And of course, then we also have ties to JFK. A lot of this came out in a special Senate subcommittee headed at that time by Democrat Senator Frank Church in 1975. So as I list some of the death attempts against Castro, a lot of it came from some of that testimony. Be it factual or not, I don't know, but it was included. One was perhaps the most famous, came in 1960. When the CIA poisoned a box of his favorite cigars. They spiked the cigars with a toxin strong enough to kill anyone who put them in their lips. They were identified to an unidentified person, but it's unclear what happened to them. Needless to say, they were never even chewed by El Comandante. Then you have the reluctant Cuban. Months earlier, at the end of Dwight Eisenhower's term, the CIA used a series of middlemen to enlist 2 gangsters to help with removing Castro, willing to pay $150,000, according to the Church Committee report. That'd be about $1.2 million or more in today's world. Sam Giancana, boss of the Chicago mob, was involved. CIA gave them 6 pills of high lethal content. But the Cuban that they gave the money to and the pills never carried it out. The CIA tried a more elaborate plan in 1963. Castro loved scuba diving. They planned to hide explosives in a large seashell, thinking it would attract him, and as he moved it, it would blow up. But they later decided, according to the Church Committee, this was impractical. The same year, they decided to contaminate one of his diving suits with a fungus, as well as an infected breathing apparatus. That plan was abandoned after Castro had a different suit. Richard Helms, who later became CIA director, said that plan was cockeyed and said the suit never left the lab. Many of them might appear to be something out of a James Bond film. Therein brings the deadly lover you were hearing about a moment ago. Marita Lorenz. She told Vanity Fair in 1993 As she was Castro's lover in late 1959, she was given 2 botulism toxin pills to put into Castro's drink. Just one would kill him in 30 seconds. She later said, I looked at the outline of Havana and I just couldn't do it. And even if she wanted to, apparently she had botched it. She put the pills in a cold cream jar, which made them gunky, unusable. Castro realized what was going on, and according to her, pulled out his .45, handed it to me, and said, you can't kill me. Nobody can. She said he kind of smiled, chewed on his cigar. He was so sure of me, he grabbed me. We made love. Implausible, possibly. Another CIA story right out of James Bond was a hypodermic needle concealed within a pen that the victim would never realize he was poisoned until too later. All of these attempts on Castro's life included American intel services to undermine his image by a psychedelic speech of some type. As I said, there were 600 attempts according to his Secret Service card. In the end, Castro died of illness. And when he passed away, the people of Havana and Cuba, for the most part, rejoiced. And there are many in Cuba still would love to be out of Cuba. But 25th of November, 2016, he died mostly of his health ailments, despite multiple attempts to assassinate him. You don't want to miss our story behind the story tomorrow night, right here this hour. We still have a second hour to come. George Noory of Coast to Coast will join us. Remember our pledge, one nation under God.
You can hear podcasts of this program at Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook.
John Beal Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, and that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call John Beal to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Beal has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Beal. Ever been in a wreck or felt as if you've been in a wreck? My advice, contact Dr. Bill Draghi, Esquire Sports Medicine. Yes, they can treat wreck victims, falls, other hazards of life, sports injuries. I go at least twice a month. That keeps the joints in line. Part of your spine get out of line, you start compensating, you're going to have additional pain. Don't be that guy. Visit Esquire Sports Medicine, Big Bend, just north of 40, EsquireSportsMedicine.com. There's only one place you can get pizza cooked over coals, Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield Valley. Of course, Napoli Brothers has a great selection of pasta dishes. Between the pizza and pasta, trust me, you will not leave hungry. Then, a few doors down, Lit Cigar Lounge, a wide variety of quality cigars, each offering a unique smoke. That cigar, some premium whiskey, all you need to do is enjoy. Lit Cigar Lounge and Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta, Chesterfield Valley. It's that time of season when families, businesses are moving. For local or long distance, I endorse McGuire Moving. Get a date set soon before the schedules are booked. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. McGuire is constantly giving back to our veterans, such as support dogs for our brave. So with McGuire, you're getting excellent service and helping our vets. McGuireMoving.com. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check VincentsJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. VincentsJewelers.com. VincentsJewelers.com. Renewal by Anderson asking, are you still battling cold drafts? Windows icing up again? Utility costs surging? You're worried about paying more every month? The truth is, you may already be paying for new windows and money lost to energy escaping your home. And here's the thing, you don't want to do this project twice. Renewal by Anderson spends every day replacing bad technology, poor installation of windows and doors that simply don't stand the test of time. But you can afford the best. America's most trusted window replacement company, Anderson. Call 877-WINDOWS or visit rbastl.com. Learn about our December savings event right now. 877-WINDOWS, rbastl.com. Renewal by Anderson. Superior products, exceptional service.
This is News Talk STL.
Answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
This is obviously the president negotiating with Democrats. There's no one better on the border than President Trump. There's no one better on interior enforcement than President Trump, and there's no one better at making a deal than President Trump. And so when we look at our role, it's supporting that and elevating that. But what our Democratic colleagues have to realize is that we're not going to walk away from enforcing the law. And when they talk about these different things and they're looking at it, they know that it's kind of rich, to be honest with you, to watch so many of them having flown off to Munich to talk about national security on the world stage, but yet failing to fund our own here at home. They know that ICE and CBP will continue to be funded throughout this, but they know that the other things that keep Americans safe will not, and that actual American workers, TSA agents, will be the ones paying the price. Look, we believe that local, state, and law enforcement should work together with federal law enforcement. That's why we don't believe in sanctuary cities. We believe sanctuary cities are the root cause of so much of what we're seeing today.
And she is dead right. Alabama Senator Katie Britt. I loved her remark. It's kind of rich to watch the Dems fly off to Munich for that European summit the other day and try to tell Europe what you need to be doing over here to control your borders and control migration, as if these Democrats have been involved in any of that in our nation. They were at one point. But during the Joe Biden open border policy, they were all about destroying our nation. And now that Trump is back in control and we're rounding up illegals, certainly the worst of the worst, and others in the process, they want to complain that ICE cannot be running around with a mask on. They have never been to Europe, and Germany, and France, where police often are fully masked, so you cannot identify them. For good reason. They don't want their families jeopardized while they're on the streets trying to protect the public. And that some members of the leftists who went over to Munich, they were looking at a free trip. That's all it amounted to for them. You get a chance to go to Germany and act important. But I won't defend the same things in my own country. Shameless. If they had the capacity for shame. Thanks for joining us. Hour number 2, Larry Connors, USA. Here every Monday through Friday for you from 6 to 8 p.m. And when we're on the air, you can watch the program. You can do so by going to Rumble on NewsTalkSTL, Larry Connors USA Rumble, Facebook, and everything goes up later as a podcast at NewsTalkSTL, Larry Connors USA Facebook, or LarryConnorsUSA.com. And if you missed our last hour and our story of the story today, talking about more than 600 attempts to assassinate Fidel Castro, many involving our government. Did you miss that? Oh, what a shame. But you can get the podcast. And that reminds me, it is very easy for you to sign up and get it delivered directly to your mail every day so you don't stand a chance to forget about it or not get around to it or go searching for it. You go to LarryConnorsUSA.com, LarryConnorsUSA.com, and simply sign up. We need minimum information, and we do not share, certainly not sell your information. Programs will be delivered direct to your email box. And let me remind you, with Larry Connors USA in each and every hour, you're going to get news, analysis, commentary, and education. You're going to leave this hour with more information than you have right now. And coming up later in this hour, as you know, the other day, former President Obama started talking about UFOs and aliens, as in space aliens. His comments brought various reactions. And one, I would like to hear his reaction to Obama. Coast to Coast host George Noory. His program often deals with supernatural, UFOs, and so forth. So George Noory will be joining us later in this hour. Let me take a moment to remind you, the 20th of Feb, that's not this Friday. Yeah, it is. It's this Friday. It's that close already. In Springfield, they will be hosting the Missouri GOP State Lincoln Days. You still have time to get registered, or you still have time to find your own way where you want to stay and then go attend. This event will begin Friday. Chris Harps and Tim Jones will be broadcasting live from the site of the event, the Oasis Hotel and Convention Center in Springfield, Missouri. I encourage you to get more details on everything. Go to NewsTalkSTL and pull up details that you need. And if you can go down there and have a desire, there are going to be some major GOP speakers. Larry, are you suggesting Trump might be there? I didn't say that. I'm just telling you. The Missouri State GOP Lincoln Dinner, an event, might well be worth your time. So we're talking earlier about leftists who went to Munich and the European Summit the other day, trying to tell them what the issues were. You remember what one of the issues were that came directly from Hillary Clinton? She stood there and she told them mass migration is a mess. It has destabilized, upended everything. Mass migration, which is exactly what Biden allowed in through the open border policy. Thank you, Joe Biden. Well, she never stood up and condemned that when Biden was in office. But now that she's no longer going to be in office and due to testify before a congressional hearing, or at least a deposition, later this week, later at the end of the month, followed by Bill the second day, she dares stand there in front of this group of Europeans and tell them, mass migration will ruin your country. She finally woke up? No, she just realized, I'm no longer part of the party. I might as well speak my mind, or what mind she has. And then you look at how blue cities and blue states have fought against illegals. Our border czar, Tom Homan, as you well know, was dispatched to Minnesota, trying to calm down some of the anxiety that existed. He reduced the forces by 700 and has now gradually moved out more because they have decided to cooperate. City and state and local police agreeing, if we have someone you want to detain or for an illegal, we will keep them in jail rather than letting them go on the street. And Holman says if other blue cities and states would pay attention, it would be better for everyone, all the way around.
I said from day one that, we need to flood the zone in sanctuary cities with additional agents. The number of agents depend on the situation on the ground, how many known criminal targets are out there, because we know we have a problem in sanctuary cities, because we know they're releasing public safety threats in the public. So rather than arrest that one criminal in jail, one agent arresting one criminal alien in the safety and security of a jail, which is safer for the agent, safer for the alien, safer for the community, they release them in the street. Now we got to send a whole team or 6 or 7 people. That is the win we had in Minnesota, everybody, because now we have agreements and coordination with jails. We can rest that public safety threat and the safety and security of jail, which means we don't have to send 6 or 7 people out to look for them. So I'm hoping other sanctuary cities look at what happened in Minnesota and how we got to the place red, which I think is a good place. I hope more people pay attention to that, and we work with these states to let our officers into jail.
Yeah. Keep them in your jail. We'll come pick them up. There's no trouble on the street. We don't have to block off intersections, raid homes, businesses. Keep them in your jail. We'll pick them up. Now, during that conference over the weekend in the European summit in Munich, Secretary of State Rubio started talking about also dealing with not only mass migration, but a threat to the entire world, and that would be Iran. And he made some very candid remarks.
We Americans may sometimes come off as a little direct and urgent in our counsel. This is why President Trump demands seriousness and reciprocity from our friends here in Europe. The reason why, my friends, is because we care deeply. We do not want allies to rationalize the broken status quo rather than reckon with what is necessary to fix it. For we in America have no interest in being polite and orderly caretakers of the West's managed decline. We do not seek to separate, but to revitalize an old friendship and renew the greatest civilization in human history.
Great. That's exactly what we'd like, correct? Retired 4-star General Jack King commending Rubio.
The part of the speech that I really loved was when Rubio identifies the failed strategies that the United States has had and how we're going after them and wants to join with Europe in working on these common problems ourselves. And what are we talking about? Mass migration, open borders, failed climate and energy strategies, the reality that we surrendered and we relied far too much on multinational organizations like the UN, the World Trade Organization, the World Health Organization, and the list goes on. Didn't solve a lot of problems for any of us. And then finally, it's an admission that we have to recover our defense capabilities and conduct a buildup to return to the kind of deterrence policies that we've had in the past. The Europeans have the same problems. Yes, shared culture, shared values, but common problems and challenges too. And I think the Europeans will positively respond to this because they see these problems and they know they have to get after it.
Yeah, they're watching it happen, just as we should be watching what's happening in some European nations as they're being taken over by radical Muslims. The State of the Union address by President Trump will be a week from tonight. We will be carrying it. That's a week from tonight. And, of course, we have so-called government shutdown underway. Not really, but Democrats trying to use it as a ploy. Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullin on this Democrat tactic of stalling.
When they wanted to do this 2-week CR, we asked for 6 weeks. They asked for 2 weeks. We said, okay, it took them 10 days before they gave us a counteroffer. White House returned an offer in 48 hours. It took them another 2 days to respond. And then when we asked, okay, listen, we're going to go into shutdown, let's have 2 more weeks of a clean CR because it took you guys 10 days to give us just a counteroffer. What they said is, no, we're not doing it. And that's when I started saying this isn't about actually opening DHS back. This is about waiting until the president is done giving the State of the Union, which is a week from Tuesday, which is why I said this is nothing but political theater, because what they're saying they can't even do. They're saying they're trying to keep ICE from doing their job. Mm-hmm. And as you admitted earlier, and because it's true, ICE and the Border Patrol is funded through the one big beautiful bill up until 2028. And so the only thing they have shut down is the federal agencies that I named, like FEMA and the Coast Guard and TSA. So they're shutting down thousands of workers for nothing but a talking point.
And they could, in fact, be endangering us. TSA, if they have a lot of workers not showing up because they're not getting paid, they'll get paid eventually, but deciding not to go to work now. Eventually, you'll have smaller airports shutting down or reducing flights, and even major airports doing the same. Major air carriers reducing flights. Do you want to get on a jet nowadays without TSA in place? I'd love to go back to the time when we didn't need them, didn't even think about needing them. We can't do that. But again, the point that Markwayne Mullin is saying, they're looking at what's going to happen a week from tonight. So they're saying, let's just kick the ball around over here in this corner.
As far as having like a photo ID exposed, absolutely not. Why? Is because the Democrats we've seen has been doxing them. They went into their place of worship where they thought they might be at. They went into their hotels. They went into the restaurants. What are you going to do? Expose their faces so you can intimidate their families? What we want is ICE to be able to do their job, and we would love for local law enforcement and for states to cooperate with us. But if we want to have a serious conversation, you bet. Let's sit down and have a conversation, figure out where we can make it where the laws that Congress passed, the ICE agents can enforce and do it in a safe manner and make sure our streets are safer. But what has happened is they haven't negotiated in good faith.
Not in good faith. The last time in 2019 we had a previous government shutdown, Trump was forced to delay his State of the Union because of that. And some of the Democrats saying, well, we're not going to show up this time. A voice of reason from the left. Yes, a voice of reason from the left. John Fetterman saying, I think it's fundamentally wrong to shut our government down. If you want to reform ICE, as Democrats do, we do want some reforms, but this is not going to do it. Why are you doing it? For me, it's always about country over party. John Fetterman, country over party. That's why I refuse to shut the government down. And with the State of the Union coming up, I will attend. And I don't expect or hope there are not going to be a lot of the paddles and those kinds of disruptions. Remember them holding up black paddles with wording on it against basically hate Trump? That's what they were saying during the State of the Union. Of course, that was not as bad as Nancy Pelosi after Trump's first State of the Union, when she took the State of the Union in her hands and then began to rip it apart on camera. We're going to get more into Iran and some of its latest concerns for us coming up later. But first, Obama and UFOs, and a viewpoint from Coast to Coast host George Norrie. Lock and load. Ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Previously, I've told you about dustless blasting, a special service offered by Wellington Environmental. It could work for you in your place. Recently, a crew removed a driveway sealer that had failed. The owner wanted to go back to the original concrete so it could be properly sealed. Dustless blasting worked. That homeowner is happy. Now, sometimes surfaces need pressure washing instead of blasting. In fact, there was an exterior stone fireplace cleansed by pressure washing, and when it dried, all the dark stain was gone. That stone had its original appearance. Wellington is versatile with blasting. Dustless blasting, or whatever you need. They will evaluate and make a decision. How do you get them to your door? Very easy. Call 314-644-4930. 644-4930. Wellington Environmental, making your world great. In fact, be safe, be well with Wellington Environmental. McGuire Moving is silver certified, which means they are great at relocating senior citizens. In fact, McGuire is a household name because McGuire understands the stress involved when moving older adults. So if you or family members need help moving, I highly recommend McGuire Moving. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. Get a free in-home estimate. McGuireMoving.com. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's, locally owned, can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check Vincent'sJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. Vincent'sJewelers.com. Vincent'sJewelers.com. Ever been in a wreck or felt as if you've been in a wreck? My advice, contact Dr. Bill Draghi, Esquire Sports Medicine. Yes, they can treat wreck victims, falls, other hazards of life, sports injuries. I go at least twice a month. That keeps the joints in line. Part of your spine get out of line, you start compensating, you're going to have additional pain. Don't be that guy. Visit Esquire Sports Medicine, Big Bend, just north of 40. EsquireSportsMedicine.com.
This is News Talk STL.
Taught me those things a young man should know. Down on my knees and begging I plead to learn a little bit more. Oh, that woman taught me to pray. I saw heaven every day. All she could.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Welcome back. In a recent interview, President Obama, former President Obama, was being asked about, what do you think about UFOs? And his response immediately, they're real, but I haven't seen them. They're not being kept in his, Area 51? There's no underground facility unless this is an enormous conspiracy and they hid it from the President of the United States. Raise your hand if you think that's possible. Joining us now, Coast to Coast host George Noory, and you often deal with paranormal and UFOs on your program. George, glad to have you on board with us.
Thanks, Larry. It's great to be with you. It was an interesting statement by the former president, who seemed to have backtracked a little bit, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He later came out and said, I'm going to stick with the fact that I saw no evidence that they have made contact with us, and kind of wanted to say, I don't really know, but there's a chance there's life out there.
The conspiracy theorists are saying that government leaders got to Obama and told him, back off, don't talk about this.
Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows? All I know is there's life out there. We've been visited. I've talked to too many people on my radio show, Larry, who have convinced me that there's too much in this universe. And this is a golden planet, as they call it, and it's worth visiting.
Well, to that extent, you know, some of your callers and some of their stories can sound pretty weird, but I've got right here in front of me a transcript of a F-18 pilot, I believe he said. And he said, reporting to his tower, this is weird, but I just had something pass underneath my wing. Went like the size of a football and went really fast and gone. They said, do you think it's a drone? He said, it was not a drone.
That is so true. The pilots have seen so many things off the USS Nimitz. It's just incredible. Back in 1971, I interviewed a Dr. Benjamin Simon, a psychiatrist, who handled the Barney and Betty Hill abduction case. You might remember that from way back. And I asked him specifically, I said, were they lying to you? And he said, I hypnotized both of them. They weren't lying. They believe whatever happened to them happened. So they're telling the truth. It's one of the greatest stories of all time.
We'll take a moment to explain that to the audience, what the story actually was.
Barney and Betty Hill, back in the 60s, from New Hampshire, claimed that they were abducted by extraterrestrials, put on a craft, floated around, and then brought back. They were a mixed couple, and at that time, that was
a racial couple.
A racial couple. Right. They decided to. They made a movie out of it with James Earl Jones called The Interrupted Journey. And I think something happened to them, something very dramatic.
I think it was just last month or so, a few weeks ago, there were reports of 4 or 5 in some kind of formation just off the coast of Oregon. And pilots were being advised, commercial pilots, avoid this area.
Well, there's no question there are drones flying all over the place, Chinese balloons, but there's also the possibility of UFOs, that they've been visiting this planet since the beginning of time, Larry. And there are many people who believe fallen angels are extraterrestrials. Who knows? But it's great stuff, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, and some of these fighter jets, they have recorded them on their video, and they're at something like 30 to 40,000 feet or higher. A drone's not going to get up like that, and they will see them moving slowly to one side and then suddenly zip away to the right or make so many maneuvers no man-made plane can do.
Well, you know that. You're a pilot, and these Navy pilots have said, we do not have anything like that right now. We can't understand where it's coming from, how fast they're moving. It's truly remarkable. There's an old theory that we were defeated by extraterrestrials in the beginning of mankind. Is there a God? I do believe so. But you know what? He made somebody else.
Well, Obama had made a statement trying to clarify, as you said, or maybe had been told back off, because it was a post he added to it later when he had asked if they were real. He said, I see no evidence suggesting they had made contact. But he said, I'm going to stick with the spirit of the speed round. He considered the question kind of a speed round. Just throw me a question, I'll give you a quick answer. But since it's gotten attention, let me clarify that statistically, the universe is so vast, the odds are good there's life out there.
Yeah, there's no question. Back then, the next day, the talk show host that got him to talk about it initially kind of left it right at that first question. He should have followed up a little bit more. But I do believe the president, when he said he hasn't seen anything, most of them have not. But I think he's in the know. They're all in.
Well, the problem is there's so many things we know now that we did not know. In fact, we did not believe there was even another solar system until 1992. That was there all this time.
Now there are billions. There are billions of systems out there, billions of planets. We can't be alone, Larry. It's impossible.
Well, then, of course, others are saying, but it's so vast and so far, how could they possibly travel from one to the other?
They've learned how to bend space and time. Take a piece of paper, put a dot on each end of it, and then fold it over where the two dots fit. That's how they're traveling. They're bending space and time where travel is instantaneously. They just pop up. That's why they disappear. They show up, so they're gone. They're here, they're gone.
You have the Area 51, which has always been considered there in Nevada as, you know, a place where maybe an alien ship and an alien was held for a period of time. What's your background on that?
We've got a reporter on Coast to Coast. His name's George Knapp. He's one of the best UFO reporters in the country. He has interviewed people from Area 51 over the years, and he is convinced that high technology from extraterrestrial sources is there, and they've been doing stuff there for a long, long time.
Well, we know we have various test sites for our military around the nation, be it Area 51 or in that area or not. We know from Nevada and elsewhere we do have them. And I would imagine the first person to see a B-2 bomber, basically a wing flying through the air, would think that can't be real. I mean, there are things that we don't want the Russians to know. They don't want us to know. But some of these things that's described and seen on video defy explanation.
Well, there's no question about it. I mean, if you just go through logic, it tells you that there's high technology out there somewhere, and that this is a Goldilocks planet. It's full of life. It's interesting to visit, and they know that from afar, and that's why they come here. And there's a theory that they seeded us a long time ago, that they are our God. They very well may be.
And there are indications on our Earth and things made in pattern set that cannot be explained by man even today.
No, that's absolutely true. Just simply read the Bible and put in UFOs in certain spots. It's an amazing story. And mankind one day will come to the realization that we're being visited, that we are not alone in the universe, and maybe we can all get along once and for all.
Well, that'd be great. And I mean, we could draw it down to a personal level. I mean, if you go in, you don't know that you got numerous microbes and everything crawling across your body right now. But if you go to look for them, put through a proper microscope, you would see they're there.
They are there. There's no question about it. And we'll get the answers one day. And we keep pounding away on our program and you on yours. We'll get the answer one day, Larry. It'll happen.
Well, I will add that in a 2021 interview that Obama had stated, when it comes to aliens, there are some things. That was 2021, not this most recent. But according to the New York Post, he later reported, there are some things I'm unable to say on air.
They are all restricted from what they're saying. And maybe one day governments will come forward and reveal the facts, the truth, but I don't think that's going to happen for some time.
All right. George Noory, host of Coast to Coast, heard all across the nation on 600-plus stations, correct?
640, Larry.
Okay. Always glad to talk to George is not only a friend of mine, a long acquaintance, but I appreciate your time. I know you had a long overnight. I'm glad to have you join us today.
Thank you, Larry. Good luck.
You bet. Thank you, too, George. I will tell you, one time I was working at Channel 4, I got a call from and it's kind of a metallic voice. I am from the planet you call Jupiter, and I'm here to tell the Earth. Oh, you should tell them I've been here, I'm here. And I thought, right, I didn't do it. But I've always wondered, what if years later this same thing shows up and says, I was here in 1990 and I told Larry Connors and he didn't report the story. Boy, did I blow that one.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
Great news from my sponsor, Tom Shaw Realtors, proving if you want to buy, sell homes, farms, acreage, you want Tom Shaw. In 2025, selling more than 100 properties, $52 million in sales. ShawRealtors.com. When I have business clients or guests from out of town, I often take them to Cafe Napoli. I know they're going to enjoy any of the Napoli locations. Cafe Napoli in Clayton, Napoli 2 in Town and Country, Napoli 3 in St. Charles, next to Napoli C, Napoli Kirkwood, or Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in the Chesterfield Valley. Excellent food and intellectual conversation, if they bring the intellectual conversation. And NapoliSTL.com. NapoliSTL.com. Renewal by Anderson asking, are you still battling cold drafts? Windows icing up again? Utility costs surging? You're worried about paying more every month? The truth is, you may already be paying for new windows and money lost to energy escaping your home. And here's the thing, you don't want to do this project twice. Renewal by Anderson spends every day replacing bad technology, poor installation of windows and doors that simply don't stand the test of time. But you can afford the best. America's most trusted window replacement company, Anderson. Call 877-WINDOWS or visit rbastl.com. Learn about our December savings event right now. 877-WINDOWS, rbastl.com. Renewal by Anderson. Superior products, exceptional service. 2026, a great time to visit Lit Cigar Lounge. The Lit Cigar Facebook has numerous events from tastings to music. My main reason for going to Lit is always quality cigars, premium whiskeys. Odds are we'll see each other at Lit Cigar Lounge. A few doors down, Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta. Get a pizza baked over coals. Excellent crust and flavor. Or choose one of the many great pasta dishes. You won't leave hungry. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta and Lit Cigar Lounge in the Chesterfield Valley.
This is News Talk STL.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Since day one, the Trump administration has been focused on two things: lower inflation and bigger paychecks. And yesterday's inflation report showed just that. The rate of inflation has fallen. Annual core CPI inflation has actually fallen to its lowest level since 2021. And real wages are up nearly $1,400. And that means roughly half of the purchasing power that Americans lost during the Biden era has now been recouped in record time in just 1 year. And this is just the beginning. Look, the president's policies are only now beginning to take effect. The president last summer signed the biggest tax cuts in American history into law, and only now are Americans in the midst of the biggest tax refund season in American history, with no tax on tip, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. So as these tax cuts, as our rapid deregulation, as our trade deals continue taking effect, you're going to continue seeing Americans' wages grow faster than the rate of inflation, and for Americans to get better off in real terms.
That sounds great. That's a senior White House Deputy Secretary, Kush Desai, talking about how our core CPI inflation now at the lowest level since 2021, and real wages up nearly $1,400. I've also seen reports that we're going to see more Americans receive IRS refund checks in the coming weeks. That's based on the year we completed and going into this next year. They will pay out later. Now, I want to remind you of something, and I point this out every time when Obama was president. I mean, and Obama and every president, and certainly during Biden when they were trying to talk about how great that inflation was way, way down, but they were always talking about the core inflation. Core inflation takes out the two biggest price drivers, the cost of fuel and groceries. Can you live without those? Oh, you can live without fuel maybe if you're not needing to warm your house and or drive a car, if you can jump a bus. But can you afford the bus cost if it keeps going up? The Dow, as you know, the other day pushed over the 50,000 mark for the first time. And a lot of folks thought that's a great sign moving forward. Well, again, if you're smart, and I know many of you are, you don't begin by taking financial advice from me, first of all. But the Dow fell back down below 50,000, which I knew it would, settling around 49,600 or so at the last check today. But that, again, is not the full indicator of what's happening in our nation when it comes to the economy. But the core inflation rate cooling down to 2.4%. That's down 0.3% from December. Doesn't sound like a lot, but we're talking about all across the nation. So again, the core inflation rate, 2.4%. But again, while it's the lowest in nearly 5 years, it does not include food and energy. They continue to go up at a slightly higher rate, around 2.5%. And the experts say that suggests there's still some inflationary pressure remaining. Which brings us to the next point, and that is, will we see the Fed change the inflation rate? I should say the borrowing rate. I'm looking at some of the last reports on this, and again, I'm not your financial advisor. I'm just relaying to you what I read. Many believe that the Federal Reserve will maintain the federal funds rate at the current 3.5 to 3.25 or 3/4 range during the next meeting, which is in March, next month. Some are even suggesting they could see a rate cut as early as June. Others indicate it would be longer, maybe late in the year, and if so, only 1 or maybe 2 basis point cuts, not very much at all. So if you look at that, according to the next meeting of the Fed, March 17, analysts and bond futures suggest a pause is likely. 2026 rate cut outlook could happen, but not if inflation remains sticky. Even if you have core inflation down, if some of the core factors kept out, food and fuel, continue to remain a little volatile or the higher side, they probably will hold off. Now, you also have to keep in mind we're about to have a new Fed chairman. Federal Reserve Governor Kevin Warsh will succeed Jerome Powell. It's Warsh, W-A-R-S-H. I didn't mispronounce like George Washington. It's Warsh. He will take over when Powell's term ends in May. Now, he's been with the Board of Governors since 2006 to 11, youngest ever Fed governor at that time. Also been with Morgan Stanley, an advisor to the Bush administration. He has indicated a preference for lower interest rates. In fact, listen to this. He believes AI technology can boost productivity without fueling high inflation. That's what a lot of folks are worried about, where the job's going to be, who's going to have them, and is AI going to really push the rates up? He thinks not. Well, again, we will have to wait and see. We were telling you earlier, about Marco Rubio at the summit over the weekend in Munich, Germany, and addressing questions about our strategy toward Tehran. And he characterized Iran's current establishment as this: we're dealing with radical Shiite clerics, people who make geographic decisions on the basis of pure theology. He said past diplomatic efforts with Tehran have proven complicated. No one's ever been able to get a successful deal with Iran, but we're going to try. Now, he's talking about with Iran under the current regime. He said we do have envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner traveling for some important meetings, but we're not sure how they'll turn out. He said, so we're not going to talk about in great detail. But he added this: for those of Europe and this applies to the Mideast and the rest of the world, we are postured now in that region for one simple reason. That is, we understand there could be threats to our forces in the region. We've seen them threatened in the past. We want to make sure we have sufficient capacity to defend them. He said, right now we are talking about negotiations. We are focused on negotiations. That's what we're focused on. The president has made it clear. And he said any shift in approach would be transparent, consistent with U.S. law. He says if that changes, it will be obvious to everyone, and obviously whatever the law requires us to do, we will do. He's trying to underscore the Trump strategy is a dual track, the carrot and the stick. We have the stick ready to beat them if we need to, but we're offering them a carrot that does not include giving them nuclear capabilities. In the meantime, Iran firing live missiles into the Strait of Hormuz during several drills yesterday, suggesting it's prepared to close that waterway if ordered by its religious leadership. And again, these came as Trump's envoys, Witkoff and Kushner, are meeting with some senior Iranian officials in Geneva. This is a second round of such talks. And yet Tehran threatening to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, which is a critical global oil transit route. Traffic was suspended for several hours because they had already started doing it, launching missiles from various vessels, coastal positions, drone operations. Our U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, has previously urged the Iranian Revolutionary Guard as late as last January, just less than a month ago, if you're going to carry out your 2-day live fire exercise, it must be in a manner that is safe, professional, avoids unnecessary risk to freedom of navigation for international maritime traffic. So they gave us this wording that this is what we're going to do. We're going to do these live drills for a couple of days during this time. So the Strait of Hormuz, where much of this cargo, oil, and other shipped through, they had to come to a stop until this shooting is over, so there's no accident. We already have a large military presence in that area. And we made it clear that if you're going to begin to step over the line, we're ready to counter. And I'm glad we are. There was another shooting you may not have heard much about from the leftist media. This took place in Rhode Island at a roller rink, ice rink, I should say. There was a hockey game going on between kids, basically. Not sure the age of the kids, maybe teens. But someone opened fire, killing one, others injuring, firing repeatedly into all those around him. If you look at it on the video, when the shots are first going off, no one is sure what it is, where it's coming from. Then when they realize it could be gunfire, they start ducking down behind the benches and everything else. Skaters get off the ice. But then it appears the guy is down because he did turn the gun on himself. So several of the skaters start racing across the ice to get to him and make sure he's not going to be a threat and to help those in need. What you're not going to see from the leftist media and make clear, this was a man who had gone through puberty, transsexual surgery, now calling himself Roberta instead of Robert. 56 years ago. He had his gender ID changed years ago. Does that not tell you again we need to be aware of the threat of this kind of thing happening? And it will happen over and over again. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says we also need to be aware of the food we are getting and giving our children.
70% of Americans are either obese or overweight. And it's not because they got indolent or because we became lazy or because we suddenly developed giant appetites. It's because we're being given food that is low in nutrition and high in calories, and it's destroying our health.
Yeah, it's maybe changing us in ways we don't even recognize at the time. I will never forget a young woman I was dating and came to me. I'm talking about the last 30 years. Said, my son's been diagnosed as allergic to gluten. What is gluten? And then when I try to go to the store and try to find gluten-free, there is no such thing. Now, of course, it's everywhere. Now, I have relatives who said they went gluten-free and their bodies and inflammation seemed to be better. In case you missed it, Jesse Louis Jackson, often called Reverend Jackson, Baptist minister ordained, civil rights activist, passed away. Protege of Martin Luther King Jr. He became a vocal critic of the Reagan administration, had his own presidential campaign in '84. And that's where I met him as they were preparing at the Democrat convention to nominate who would lead the ticket. He was runner-up to Governor Dukakis. Never sought the presidency again. But Jesse Jackson passing away of health issues quietly at his home. And we also lost someone else known to many. He was famous for the line, I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Robert Duvall, the consigliere in The Godfather, for which he won a supporting actor Oscar nomination. He also later appeared, or prior to that, in the Days of Thunder, acting as a NASCAR crew chief. He died yesterday at age 95. First big role was with Gregory Peck, 1962, To Kill a Mockingbird. Reverend Jesse Jackson and Robert Duvall, no longer with us. Pray for their families. As always, I thank you for listening. We will be back here tomorrow. Make sure you and your friends are ready. 6 o'clock. And remember our pledge, one nation under God.